My name is Miranda Lash. I am the Ellen Bruss Chief Curator at MCA Denver, and it's my distinct pleasure to welcome two incredible women tonight on our talk about the amazing and inimitable Ana María Hernando. So I'm going to begin by sharing their bios so that we have a bit of grounding in their incredible practice. And then Katja and I are going to take turns asking Ana María all the things we've ever wanted to know about her practice. And we are going to be sure to leave some time at the end for questions. So make sure to have your thinking caps on as we move through the talk. So I will start with Katja, who is my incredible colleague at the Fine Arts Center at Colorado Springs. And I will tell you, I've had the pleasure of seeing a number of your shows over the years and deeply appreciate their thoughtfulness and rigor and your commitment to bringing really exceptional voices to our region. So I want to begin in a spirit of thanks for your work. And also for your, yes, did I hear snaps? That's right, snaps. And also just to acknowledge your spirit of collaboration in working with MCA Denver, knowing that we had overlapping opportunities to celebrate Ana María. So Katja is the curator of contemporary art at the Fine Arts Center at Colorado College. Her recently curated exhibitions include what we will discuss imminently, Ana María Hernando, Cantando Bajito, Singing Softly, Open Hearted in 2025, Hong Ngo, Ungrafting from 2024. She has also worked with artists such as Senga Nengudi, Namira, Laura Sofia Perez, Maria Gaspar, and Sofia Galiza Muriente to present their work at FAC. Previously, Katja served as the assistant curator at the Logan Center for Exhibitions at the University of Chicago and as a research associate for the Department of Modern Contemporary Art at the Art Institute of Chicago. With a dedication to research-based artistic practice, she is motivated by movement, translation, and fragmentation in contemporary art, and is especially interested in how histories of the Americas manifest in the present. And I also just want to add, if you have not, there's so many reasons to visit FAC, not only Ana María's exquisite show, but also the rehanging of the collection is really extraordinary. So just want to acknowledge that. And then we have the amazing Ana María Hernando. Yes! Ana María is from Argentina. From Buenos Aires. She's Colorado-based. We proudly claim her. She's a multidisciplinary artist whose work focuses on the feminine, using empathy to make the invisible visible and to question our preconceptions of the other and each other, including nature and the earth, their worth and value. In her installations, Ana María uses textiles in abundance and sometimes includes the work of women from around Latin America and beyond, from embroideries of cloistered nuns in Buenos Aires, and we'll talk a little bit about those, to mountains of tulle, to the weavings and wares of Peruvian women from the Andes. Ana María has a BFA from the California College of the Arts in Oakland, California, and a BS in education from Profesaro Eccleston in Buenos Aires, Argentina. She also studied at the Museum School in Boston and the Escuela Nacional de Bellas Artes in Pueyrredón. Ana María was the 2020 Prix Henry Cloos in Sculpture awardee by Lana Pool Art Foundation, and she spent 2020 in residency, having had a major solo show at the Foundation's Chateaux and Gardens by the Mediterranean in France. And if you happen to subscribe to Art Desk, there's often an insert in the New York Times. You will see a gorgeous spread of her work from that recent Lana Pool project. It looks amazing. Congratulations. She's had solo exhibitions at the Boulder Museum of Contemporary Art, Denver Botanic Gardens, Kemper Museum of Contemporary Art in Kansas City, Missouri, Museum of Contemporary Art Denver. This is actually her second solo exhibition with us. Oklahoma Contemporary in Oklahoma City, Robichon Gallery in Denver, the Tweed Museum of Art in Duluth, Minnesota, and the University of Colorado Art Museum in Boulder. So, and I just want to add, having now, since you were one of the first artists I met when I moved to Denver, and I feel just so deeply impacted by your sense of optimism and hope for our future. So please join me in welcoming Ana María Hernando. So, Ana María, there's so much we could ask. But I thought we could kick us off, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off by grounding us in the origins of your practice, what speaks to your deepest inspirations as an artist, and what gets you going?
So hello, everyone. It's great to be here. I have always felt as an artist, and when I was a child, when I was 5, I decided that that's what I wanted to do. And, life turns here and there, but that's always has been a part of me. And I moved to the States a long time ago, 40 years ago this year. And throughout my life, I painted. And then some 25 years ago, I began to do more sculptural work and introducing textiles. Growing up in Buenos Aires, my grandparents began a textile factory there, and all my family has worked there and is working there, and my siblings are running it. And for me, as a teenager, I would go and work there during the summers. And that experience had an impact that it took me years to discover. I never thought I would work with textiles. I never thought they were a medium for me. And then slowly, like from the side, I began to work on that and thinking about the women in my family who would come in the afternoons as we were children. They would come and they would or embroider or crochet or sew and just talk while we were doing homework. And all of that coming together, I see how it has come into my work, and it has been important.
Thank you so much, Ana María. I want to just start by saying thank you to the MCA for the invitation and for the collaboration. It's been such a pleasure. You all are so lucky to have the MCA and these wonderful world-class curators in your community, both Miranda and Leilani Lynch. Just really so honored to be in community with you all tonight. And Ana María, I was looking at my email this morning just to see when we first started our conversation, and it was over 2 years ago when I had emailed you, because I moved to Colorado about 5 years ago, and I was interested in who's working here, who's making work, and you were on my radar early on, and I finally emailed you and asked if I could come for a studio visit, and I remember you responded and you said, "Oh, things are so busy in the studio right now. It's a perfect time to come visit," which I thought was the best response. Like, it was already an indication of your dedication and your energy with your work. And part of the conversation we had is you came down to visit the Fine Arts Center in Colorado Springs, and you hadn't been able to visit before, so you were very interested in the space, and from there our conversation developed. And soon after, you called me to tell me that the MCA had also approached you for an exhibition, and we thought this was a really exciting opportunity to present your work at 2 different institutions in Colorado and to celebrate your work. And so I guess my question to you is, what was it like to work on 2 exhibitions simultaneously? What was that process like for you? How did you navigate that? I relate to spaces, and
I respond from that relationship with spaces. And this was for me, I mean, to have this opportunity of having 2 shows in 2 very different places that allow me to think about my work and what I can do in different ways, but also just to be able to share different bodies of work. That is a gift to me and to be with these 2 amazing institutions. Now, you know, I think the first time I went to that we were meeting at the Fine Arts, I came in and the sound of the filtration, ventilation system was so loud that I began to see pieces inspired by this sound. And then, you know, that piece, maybe we'll do it in the future, but it didn't happen for this show, but it was really an opening for me to think about our show in the space based on sound. And then, you know, with the MCA, that the space is so different, 18 feet tall, ceilings, and for the fine arts, the space where my work is feels very intimate, like a trip to the inside of your heart. For me, it is. And just being able to work on those 2 ideas at the same time, I felt very lucky, and where I could expand what I wanted to do. And so that was great. And then, you know, the collaboration and how you were all talking and the ideas of what to do together. I love that, and I'm grateful for all the personalities and the recognition how collaboration is so fundamental to make things better. Then there were the logistics of, oh my God, how am I going to do this? But here we are. Yeah. It's done.
You were very brave. Thank you for saying yes. We were a little nervous when we asked. I do want to recognize a voice that is not here with us for the best possible reason, which is the curator of your MCA exhibition, Leilani Lynch. But she is not here because on Sunday she gave birth to, yes, applause for baby Isa Elizabeth, who is Earthside with us now. So just wanting to acknowledge that she stewarded that conversation, and also to just acknowledge that I really love the selections you made for our respective architectures. You know, when we were at MCA, actually just last night, we were talking about the idea of ascension in that space. We have these gorgeous 18-foot tall ceilings, and by the way, this is a sneaky slide that I included. This is actually from 2009. Because I just wanted to shout out Ana Maria's first exhibition at MCA. But actually, these slides give you a sense of how she took advantage of the height and that idea of looking upwards in the space, and also being so ambitious, Ana Maria. I mean, to see those thousands of yards of tulle roll in. This is the fountain like piece, or I should say the many drops of water, the chorritos, coming down the space. And I feel like it was executed because knowing that you had this deep knowledge. So I thought I'd ask you a little bit about MCA, and Katja, I would love for you to drill down on the pieces at FAC. Yeah.
So, you know, the way, I, as I was saying before, I respond very much to spaces. And for the MCA, I went and I sat in each space and I imagined the pieces. And of course, those places would just I would see these big things, and then for the fine arts, because of the way it's organized, all the sounds, how they could be contained. So I have there a couple of pieces that are based on sound, that they have sound. And so the way that, for me, my body would relate to those spaces is very different. And I think of the people who go also to the museums. I imagine a lot of the people that go to each of these spaces have been there before several times. So for me, it's also an opportunity of how to present the space in a way that it's less invisible, where we are more aware of the skylights and of how the spaces connect and what you find when you come up the stairs. So that is, I'm always curious about that. And I suppose, you mentioned the ascension, and I never thought about that. When you work on a composition, I believe that composition is one of the most, the things that come because that's how you are in the world. And that's your response to space, and that's your response to how to organize all of that. So I'm thinking about that concept, and I like the sky, and I like the earth, and the movement of things that happen when those spaces talk to each other.
And speaking of the architectural spaces, I think one thing I was struck by when you came to visit is you had the idea to line the doorways of our galleries with a work that would be called Pedir Permiso, a title which I didn't know until much later. And then you told me sort of about your thinking, because at first it was to my understanding more about making visible sort of the doorways, right? Responding to our architectural space. But you were thinking about it on another level, in a much deeper way. Do you want to speak about that piece in particular?
Yeah, as humans and in this society, I find that we kind of move in the world feeling that we own it, that it's ours to walk by, use, take, design, whatever. And I think there is a respectful quality that I wanted with that piece to think about when we move from one space to another. We are really doing that. And it's not the same. And in some cultures and in the Andes, sometimes, when going through places in nature, I have been in Peru with a dear friend and a teacher, Don Americo Yavar, and we would be sometimes going through the land, and suddenly he would stop, ask permission, and then go on the other side, between two trees or something that for me was like, this is the same as before. But that thought began to make me think about how we move in the space in a respectful way. And at the same time, we have been going through seeing in the news and all over the world how sometimes people go into other people's spaces by force and without asking permission, with that attitude that we have the right, we own, and we own you. with this. So all of those ideas were for me present when thinking about putting those pieces at the side. And also calling into the conversation and into our awareness a certain sacredness of space and an awareness of these transitional spaces. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And our next question is kind of coming back to the two exhibitions together, and that both titles include the word of singing, right? Cantando bajito, singing softly, and keep singing here at the MCA. So we're wondering, like what those titles, what the importance of singing and sound was for you in thinking through each of these exhibitions.
So the first title that I came up with was for the MCA. And so one of those days that I was walking and imagining the show, then this song I grew up with, from Maria Elena Walsh, kept coming to me and kept kind of knocking, saying, hello, hello. And I have learned to pay attention to things that suddenly appear in some way in my awareness. And I began to listen to it by different people. So this is a song from 1971. Maria Elena Walsh, she wrote, she was very outspoken about her ideas in a very courageous way, in a society very conservative. And she wrote books for children, songs for children, poetry, songs for grown-ups. And this song, Como la cigarra, like the cicada, became over time like an anthem for perseverance, for not giving up, for keep going. And it begins by saying, so many times I was killed, so many times I died, but I keep coming back and I keep singing. And so I began to think about that very much, and with what everything going here in the US and in other parts of the world, but here in the US. And from there, that was another thread that informed me about that show and informed me about the colors and how it was going, the rhythm of it. And then in this thinking about singing and what it does to us, that I think singing, like dancing, changes our bodies, changes the energy, makes our energy lighter in a way that I think when our energy is lighter, we can come up with more solutions, we are more nimble to move from one space to another, and I think song does that. And so as I was thinking about that, then I was naming a piece I was working on, and I named it Cantando bajito, singing softly, that I think it's in some tango, that expression, but it refers to that kind of singing that you do for nobody else, just because you are walking down the street and you think of, like the way I was thinking about the song of Maria Elena Walsh, but, or if you are singing in the shower or while you are working, and it made me think how I have noticed how I wasn't doing much of it. And I was noticing that I wasn't hearing people singing that in that way. So I decided to give that name as a way of reminding us that that is a possibility, that that is right there for us. Even if we sing out of key like I do, or I don't remember the songs, I usually repeat the same part of a song over and over. But it's just, when I was installing at the MCA, one day, 2 days, I was alone during the weekend, and I was working on the piece, and I needed the energy to just move all of that tool, and I was listening to Bad Bunny and singing there, and I thought, if the cameras are catching this, I hope nobody's paying attention. but I think it's good for
I was watching it. No, I'm kidding.
I thought they heard you. Yeah. Anyway, that's the long response, but in many ways, it's what I want for these shows to give to people. They open the possibility of joy, of that space that nobody can rob us, and that we can go back to it. And in many ways, it feels an amazing way of resisting, and and being rebellious. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Actually, I think that is a great transition to this quote that I read from you that's very succinct but very powerful, which is, soft can be strong. And I love that, right? That's a very different approach to what power is and what strength is. And you were talking earlier about how, in so many ways our most precious commodity is our headspace, our energy, the sentiment we bring to things. And your work, I think, is this par excellence example of softness, feeling powerful, of softness, feeling literally occupying space, and almost having this feeling of abundance and overwhelm in the best possible way. And you've often tied that expression of softness to femininity, in a way that's very unabashed, right? Like, this is in part about the female body. It's in part about how, feminine, impulses work. And so could you say a bit more about that?
Yeah, I'm very interested in being unapologetic about the way we are in the world when we are using this kind of power that thinks of others and thinks of community in the best way. I find that when you think of power, we think of these models of power that are very oppressive, that the powerful is powerful because it has made others less powerful and dependent. And yesterday I was saying how I think it's way more powerful when you are more powerful, when you give power and open the doors for others to be powerful too. Because that's a power that comes from not from fear, but from confidence. And I'm very interested in the feminine and the expression of the feminine in all of us, as a force, as this abundance of generosity, and generosity in the way that I find that the feminine is always thinking about the group and what's best for everyone involved. So for me, coming from Latin America, when somebody tells you to think about the unit, I find that, and that was something that when I moved to the States, I was surprised how when you ask someone to think about unity, people think about a one person. And you think of what you want, who you are, your boundaries, all of that, that it's very important. But in Latin America, I find when you bring up the idea of the one, people in general think of family, and that's the unit. And so I'm interested in talking about that part of the feminine that is always moving as a group and as a community. And these waterfalls that also we learn to think that there's not enough. And I want to I want to just think, yes, there is. There is a lot for us. And for me, these waterfalls are these passionate, but also talking about the unstoppable abundance of the resources of who we are and how, I mean, we are so many of us in the world. So coming together, I mean, we are an enormous force. So that I want that presence in my work, and I think of that as a soft kind of power where you don't need to be aggressive to make your voice heard or be assertive.
Just building on that point, I want to mention, the Fine Arts Center is part of Colorado College, so we work with students, and we are working with students, and they have been extremely responsive to your work, and we've gotten great feedback. And I think part of the reason, thinking about this idea of the feminine and softness, which doesn't mean weakness, right, is at this time where especially for young people, this idea of femininity is getting so policed, is getting boxed into a narrow definition. I think your work is offering an expansiveness that is really necessary right now. So I just wanted to add that too, that's been such an important part of our exhibition at the FAC as well. But our next question is about movement, and one of the things I responded to right away with your work as someone who I learned to speak English when I was 10. I move across languages, and obviously you do as well, and it's such an integral part of your work, but also the way you title your work. You often use at least 2 languages for your titles, and to me that speaks to a kind of movement. And so I wanted to see if you could speak to how movement sort of influences your work. And at the FAC, I'm thinking in particular about the work Écoutons, Escuchamos, we listen, but also the mountain sculpture.
Yeah, so language is, for me, is this floating. I see the words floating, and I go from one language to the other. Some days I'm more in one language and I cannot think of the same words in English or the other way around. And I enjoy it. Sometimes I wish I enjoy it, and I think it's the way the brain works. And it's important for me to name my pieces in both languages, at least, as an acknowledgement of all the cultures involved. For me, in making the work, I many times think of me like I'm like a soup of many different places I have lived, and all the different ingredients. So I want to acknowledge that and also open the work to different ways of being in the world and different ways of thinking. The beauty with language, for all of you that you have different languages, is that each language is a whole world, very specific with feeling and colors, and also I would add very individual in our memories and how each word has a weight that you can trace it to your specific childhood. So I find it beautiful in that way. And then movement, as I was saying, words for me are floating around and are moving around. And also, I hope that people can relate to my work in all of, not only the head and the ideas, but respond with your body, to feel it with your body, relate to whatever it takes you from the past or into the future. And I think the body is so powerful for that. And we can move. And that is a gift we have as humans. And talking about that, we are working with the students on a performance for May 1st. And it's based
6
on
p.m. 6 p.m.
6 p.m. And it's based on this piece, that mountain. And the piece is called Mover Montañas, Moving Mountains. And the students, we are working on it, and with sound by Ben Coleman. So it's an experiment, but I'm super excited about it.
Well, it's like that, it's almost like that riddle, how do you move a mountain one stone at a time, So I think I'm going to ask our last question, and then we're going to open it up to the audience, but I'd love to touch a bit more on this spirit of coming. You talked about coming together and community and collaboration, and it's not just a metaphor in your practice, although there is a visual metaphor for sure. For example, in the very use of tulle as a material. Tulle, as many of us know, it's a very sheer material when you're looking at a single sheet, but when you group many sheets together, that's when you get that vibrance and color. So literally that accumulation of the material, but also the fact that you directly invite people to help in making the work. Which was such a delight. We had the honor at MCA of having a piece that was communally made, and it's about to come up, Cama para la Luna, a bed for the moon. That piece was made during a workshop that you orchestrated, an invitation for others to participate in pulling through the pulling through the tulle. So it's going to appear in a minute. I am so proud that so far no toddlers have jumped into it. And look how inviting that is. And so can you talk about that spirit of invitation and coming together in your process?
Well, it's very obvious that all this work I could never make by myself. And there are so many people involved, and steps, and installers, and all of that. And I want to acknowledge what a gift that is for the artists, that we have many that come and help us to make these things we dream to become a reality. And I'm also fascinated to what I was saying before, what happens when we come and we are together, working together. It's not only what we make, but the interactions. And that for me, like that mountain, the Orange Mountain, that we did as a group at the Dairy Center in Boulder. I think it was 2 years ago, I don't remember, more or less. And I had a circle of small tables, and some sewing machines, and then people were invited to bring their sewing machines too, because I know for some people they only work with their own sewing machine.
Of course.
But we did it, everyone was sewing these raffle pieces of tulle, and we were feeding the center, and that's how we made a mountain. And it was such a joyful process, and then the connections between people, and how some of them, they discover, oh, I know you through email. I emailed you about whatever 2 years ago, or just the community that happens when making these things together. And then several of the pieces at the MCA also were made by friends coming. Friends could say, do you need help? Do you need help? How can I help you? And people would bring food, and others, we would sit and sew. And sewing is such a calming experience, and the conversations you have at those moments, those are treasures. And so, yeah.
Oh, thank you. I feel like Katja and I would joyfully ask you questions all day, but we should share you with others. And so I'd like to open it up now to see if others have questions for Ana María Hernando. So if you want to raise your hand, the light is, oh, we got one right here. My colleague Ty is passing the microphone.
Yes. Hi, Ana Maria. I'm so curious about, I relate a lot with your work. I'm from South America. For some reason, the material that you use is so bring me home. It's playful. I feel like I'm floating. I really have a body experience just seeing your work on screen. I didn't have the opportunity to see in the museum. So my question for you, why did you choose the tulle? I know your family was in the textile business. I don't know if it's related to that, or, it's so voluptuous. I just want to throw myself on those piles, to be honest with you. And because one more thing that I want to say before you answer my question is, when you talk about the water, the first thing that came to my mind was the Iguazu Falls, because it's how I see your country from mine. I'm from Brazil. And the voluptuous and the water and it's just like, it's so much, and it's so magnificent. So that's how I'm experienced your work on the screen, and I cannot wait to see in person. But why the tulle?
Well, first I will say, for you that my work made you think about the Iguazu Falls is like, what a compliment. If any of you have not been there, it's one of those landscapes that you go, oh my God, I cannot believe this, because it's such an enormous amount of water, and the force of it, it's just, you are in awe. And as you're approaching them, you can hear the sound becoming louder, and then you see the steam, and then you see them. So thank you for that. And tulle, I never thought I would use tulle. I was using other fabrics, organzas and silks, and for that, I have been working with a group in Argentina of cloister nuns and their families. And my family was never working with organza or none of these. The factory is more, they make clothes for sports, and so nothing translucent. And I'm attracted to these translucent fabrics because I find how I can make new colors by layering them, so it's like a way of painting. But with the tulle, I was working on a piece for a show at the CU Art Museum. This was 2016, And I wanted to give more volume inside to this piece. And I thought of the petticoats with the tulle. And so I ordered a few. And I was like, wow, these things are very interesting. So then I went to Joan Fabrics and I got a few yards of the tulle, and I was, wow. And then I realized I needed way more tulle. And I would go to the store and people were like, I was buying like, I don't know how many yards, and people were saying, oh, what are you making? And how do you explain, I'm working on a sculpture and but that's how I began. And then I began to discover how sculptural it was. And when you have the work inside, when you have it outside, it's a whole other thing. But when you have it inside, you give it a shape and it mostly stays that way. And then tulle also comes in different not qualities, but thicknesses and stiffness. And I have been using a lot of it. So that's how it was. And like with any material, and I love materials and I'm curious about new materials, it's a relationship because you approach it and you think, oh, I can do this, but then you go, oh. And so it's like getting to know a person. Yeah.
That painting comparison, definitely. Okay, other questions? Oh.
Hi, Ana Maria. It's a hi. I just really want to hear more about the shoes. There's been no discussion of it. I want to hear your story.
So, so those shoes, those sandals, are worn in Peru, in the Andes, and throughout the Andes, by old, young, women, men, winter, summer. It's their shoes. And they are made out of tires, old tires. There is something beautiful, and you cannot see. I should think of a piece where I showed the bottom, because the bottom, they are all carved in different ways, the
Thanks, Katja.
part of the tire, as a way of finding the pair. And I have been to Peru, I don't know, 12, 15 times, and each time I have gone to this small town called Moyomarca, of 500 people. And when I began to buy, with the sandals, what I saw was that this is really their connection to the earth. And this is a culture that has such a fluidity with everything around them, and a constant relationship, with the water, with the wind, with the clouds, with the bird, with the cat, with, it's just the mountains. And it's as if this back and forth, and of course it's very important to read all of these signs for survival and to know when to plant and what to do, all of that. But I thought that way of being in the world is such a gift to us who are so domesticated. And for me, the sandals are the symbol of that relationship to the earth. And when I began to bring them, so I would buy their old ones. These are the ones discarded that they cannot use anymore. And then before going there, I would buy in Cusco new ones. And so I would give them the new ones, buy the old ones. And through the years, going back to Peru, I would arrive to the town and people, they mostly speak Quechua. Some speak Spanish. I don't speak Quechua. But people would show me how they had hidden behind their fireplace a bunch of old sandals, and I thought, oh, this is their savings account, you know. But I would be bringing them through different trips. Yes, I want to bring more. But one part that when I began to show them, also there was a very, the conversation about immigration from the south, the southern border of the US was getting really heated and obsessive. And so I began to show this piece as a comment of how we are not seeing the gifts that other cultures can bring to us. We are looking at these situations with eyes of poverty and not of abundance and the richness that the exchange can bring. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and I don't know if it's visible in the image, but I love how much mud is on the boot. Like they're just like they've spent time on the earth for
Yes.
sure. Any more? I think we have.
Hi, I'm Cindy. I'm going to be working at Chateau de la Napoule this summer, teaching at their new art retreat program. And just having been there and loving that space, I'd love to hear you talk about. I wasn't able to see your work there, but I've seen a lot of images of the tulle spilling out of the castle windows and down the stairway, and I'd love to hear what it was like to work there, in contrast to these spaces which are so angular and high and tall in different kinds of ways, but working in a historic building like that.
I adore the foundation and the chateau, and for me it's a home, and I feel I can go anytime. I have materials there. When I say, oh yeah, I'm thinking of going, oh come, yes, come. But it also, I feel very grateful for my time there. I got an award that it involved a whole year at the chateau. It's an award they give, I think, every 2 years to a sculptor. It was the first time they gave it to a woman, so I was like, yes. And I got there, and I had been a few months before, and how are we with time?
I think maybe one more question after this.
Okay.
If that's it. Yeah.
So I had been there, had planned a whole show throughout all the gardens and the buildings, and then I got there January 11th of 2020, and we are planning, and I ordered the tool from the company I was working with there, that the tool was coming from Italy. And I got all these rolls. They arrived on a Thursday. And that next Monday we were going to buy the materials for the structures. And that was March, middle of March. And France went into that weekend into a lockdown along with the majority of the world. So I ended up having tulle, lots of it, and a building. And then, in the basement, there are all of kinds of things that people live. And also with the uncertainty of not knowing how long, what's happening. And I just began to use the chateau as the structure. And for me, it was such a discovery. And also, I could do a piece that would come out of the window onto the street. There were no cars, nobody was passing, so I could have it there without the problem. And then, the same tool I was reusing for something else, because that's what I had. But I'm super grateful to my time there. I think it expanded me as an artist enormously. Also, how quiet the world became. And I didn't have to spend hours and hours at the computer. And the generosity of the chateau and the people there. You know, one time I was thinking of doing a video and I was trying to figure out how to make the tool move, and it was coming through this enormous 15th century door, and I was trying to figure out the logistics, and the director, Nelsie, said, well, we can always take the door down. And I'm like,
all right.
Wow, okay.
I like that.
Their attitude is like, yes, yes, what do you want to do? So, fantastic.
I think we have time for one more question.
As an artist, I'm curious, are you getting grants for all of it? I know this is thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of materials, of tool. Are you getting grants? Are you getting sponsors? Are you paying this for yourself? How are you making this happen?
Well, for these shows, I have the generosity of the museums, and for usually, you know, when I do a show, we take into account a budget and what we can do or can't. And I feel very lucky that sometimes when I have an idea, then the forces come together and a grant happens. And yes, I apply to grants and I apply to different things. Sometimes I get them, sometimes I don't, like most of us, the majority. But yeah, so, you know, in the case for here, it was the two museums supporting the producing, you know, like for the MCA, a lot of the work is new. And I did have some tool from other projects, but we had to buy enormous amounts of it. And in that way, I will say that it's such a treasure for us to have institutions that support the dreams of the artists, and in that way support the dreams of the communities and open this. It's like this circle. Whoever gives money to a museum, that money flowers and just becomes bigger and keeps going. So, yeah, I'm just grateful for the
Thank
museums.
you for being our spokesperson, Ana Maria. That's amazing. I just really want to thank you for your generosity of spirit and your generosity tonight. And huge thanks to Katja Rivera, and congratulations on a fabulous exhibition. We're so excited to have you both. And just, yeah, really want to thank you. And please join me in closing us out. All right.